Great. Hi, everybody. Good to see you. For today, our topic is building digital decentralized. I think no matter how you end up with your idea of building a collective platform for AR arts, in the end, what you're going to do is to build an organization that is both digital because it resides online, but also decentralized. And I would like to look deeper with you into what that actually means in terms of building these organizations, but also in terms of maybe existing models that can serve as as an inspiration or that can help getting an awareness. I tried not to have too many overlaps to the presentation a couple of weeks ago, but probably this isn't possible because, of course, there will be overlaps. If you have any questions, just interrupt me and ask your question. I'm happy to respond. So I'm going to talk approximately 30 minutes. And then there is enough time for us for questions and answers. I hope we can get a little bit closer to helping to shape your ideas around that organization. Okay, are there any questions or requirements at this point? Because if not, I would suggest let's get started. 1 second. Okay, so I have a presentation for you, and as I said before, so that is going to be the topic of today, and we will dive deeper into it very shortly. But first of all, for those people that do not know me, and also those that watch the stream on Twitch, I would like to briefly introduce myself. So I'm a co-founder and CEO of Supermarkt Berlin. Supermarkt is a community hub and a platform in Berlin that is dedicated to digital culture and alternative economies. So we are exploring this very difficult realm between arts, culture, the market, economy, society, and technology. So these are several fields combined. And we have been doing this for 10 years now. First of all, the first edition of Supermarkt has been installed into an abandoned grocery store in Berlin-Wedding. And 5 years ago, we have moved to Kreuzberg, Marienplatz. So that's our space, as you can see it here on this image. Yeah, basically what we are doing is we are hosting not only Supermarkt, but also Platform Cooperatives Germany and also other organizations. So we really help building organizations that are in their core cooperative and digital and also decentralized. So this is what we have been doing mostly over the past years. So that means we are consulting and supporting in building cooperative organizations. We help especially with the founding of cooperatives. We organize workshops and conferences and learning journeys, as well as community meetups. And we engage a lot in finance activism. These are our topics, and it's not all tied to blockchain or Bitcoin. This plays a role, but we really try to see things in a larger picture, because we strongly believe that we should stop looking at domains such as finance or Bitcoin from an isolated position, but rather taking into account the context and the side effects of their use in order to better understand how it plays out on the long run, and in order to help building systems that are more reliable and sustainable. One of the things we did this year is the Money Lab Berlin. We started off a platform for continuous conversation and collaboration on money-related topics. So we also try to expand our notion of money and how we can use money and finance, and also try to create a certain curriculum of knowledge that I think would be great if we could share and build on, because it's not true that only financial analysts are the ones understanding finance and money, but we all do, because we are using it every day. So in that sense, everyone is an expert, and we are really interested in hearing stories around money and how people deal with it and what their strategies are. So that's a platform you can also visit online, Money Lab Berlin, and there are a lot of videos and other resources for you to look at. So let's take a look at what is a digital decentralized organization. So basically, what you see here in this image is probably what it is not, because you see here people in a physical space, and in my understanding, a digital organization, yes, of course, does have people in physical spaces, no doubt about it, but it also has a lot of members or shareholders or stakeholders or employees working from many different parts of the world. So it is definitely decentralized. And then the level of decentralization, or let's say the level of control or of a controlled decision making, that depends entirely on every organization. So there is, maybe for clarification, it's also good to look at two terms, decentralized and distributed, because they both do not mean exactly the same. Decentralized basically means that there is no single point where a decision is made, right? And distributed means that the process of decision making is basically happening, is shared across multiple nodes, but there can be centralized decision making in instances. So I think this is a very interesting component to look at before we dive deeper into the topic, decentralized and distributed, because it also touches down on the automatization of decision-making power and the level of freedom that people have in discussing and taking control over group decisions. And it also touches down on, of course, hierarchies and the idea of centrality, of a central power that is ultimately taking decision versus dispersed groups of people all over the world taking decisions together. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I guess I would say this is like, I just want to invite you to put that into your line of thinking as we proceed with this conversation this morning, because I think it's really essential to be open towards the question of how you would like to see decision-making processes within an organization, because hierarchies are not in themselves a bad thing. Also, is decentralization in itself not a good nor a bad thing? It's really something that has to be discussed in a specific context, I guess. So basically, I would like, first of all, to look with you into decentralized autonomous organizations, in short, DAOs. And the basic idea of it is, and I've put it here in this little paragraph. I have no idea whether you can read it, the people in the room, but I can basically I can read it out loud. Can you imagine a way of organizing with other people around the world without knowing each other and establishing your own rules and making your own decisions autonomously, all encoded on a blockchain? So DAOs, decentralized or distributed autonomous organizations, are making this real. So are people here in the room that have already an idea of DAOs or have used them before? Maybe those people who have, maybe you can, yeah, I see one. Yeah, okay, otherwise, I would be happy to really get back a little bit and to present one of the DAO platforms. So one of the examples of one of the most popular DAOs, among others, of course, is DAO Stack. You see the URL at the bottom of my presentation, so you can look it up for yourself. So basically, DAOs are here for creating organizations, but not formal organizations. This is not about building a limited or a cooperative or whatever, but this is about creating an organization that follows a specific goal. So this is about to create an organization that is controlled by a community, that is tied to a crypto token. So you need to have a wallet in order to participate, and then that to raise funds for a specific project or proposal. And in order to do so, people get together and shape an organization. And you can do that on DAO Stack, for instance. You can also use Aragon. This is another major provider. So the basic idea is to come up with a specific cause, an idea, a goal you want to work towards, and then what happens is, and here I share a screenshot of the website, where you basically you provide a name and you add members, and then you launch the organization, and then you at least you have a space online, right, where you can exchange, where you can chat with each other, and above all, where you can raise funds. So how does this fundraising work on a decentralized autonomous organization, DAO? Well, basically, here at DAO Stack, for instance, people can vote a project up, or they can vote it down. So they can say whether they like a project or whether they don't like it, and they can invest money into it. So this money they invest is a cryptocurrency, and you can only use, or you can only get active in such a DAO via a Web3 browser, which is Brave, for instance, the Brave browser, or it could also be others, but this one is the one I use. And via your wallet, that browser, you can send money into specific projects. So that means there's also an algorithm behind DAO Stack, where you automatically set a goal, and people from different reputations can vote and can share their money. And in the end, it's really a matter of whether the community is up for a specific project, whether they like it or not, because if they don't like it, then you probably won't get the funds, or people will downvote it. And then, of course, a DAO can also have a reputational power. So those people that are longer in an organization, their vote can be more weighty than those that just came in. So there are different protocols within DAOs, and there is a constant development on how DAOs work. But basically, one thing is important to know: it is a reputational system. It is about earning a reputation. It is also about really sticking around and being present, because that's also how your visibility grows. And in the end, it's about bearing with the community and also accepting group decisions, because just the fact that you put out a project there or proposal doesn't mean that it will get funded.
I would have a question.
So
Ella,
you can check out DAOs. It's basically open for everybody. You can create with if you have an online wallet, you can create a profile for instance, on Alchemy, on DAO Stack, or also Aragon or other DAO platforms. And you can just check it out, becoming a member as, hello?
I would have a question, Ella, in between. Is there is a vote related to the money or to the ownership of token, or that means if I have more tokens, is my vote more powerful, or how is this dealt with?
Yes, basically, it's like every wallet has a specific address, and people also have nicknames, so you can. So there is a chance of understanding who votes and who doesn't, but it doesn't really show like firsthand. But every investment, every vote is also tied to a specific wallet address, and therefore also to the name. Yeah, basically, there is also some yeah, maybe criticism or discussion around DAOs, because the underlying part is, of course, is the cryptocurrency and is the algorithm. So there are people that think, okay, maybe that they would like to see a little bit more, let's say, social components within a DAO. And this is also what I would like to get a little bit deeper into, because within DAOs, we are really at a very early stage. So I would say since around 3-4 years, DAOs have started to become a thing. They only exist online. I think there has been a DAO also registered as a kind of limited somewhere in the US. So this has happened. So there has been also legal recognition for DAOs, but this is totally exceptional. And the big question is, you know, there are several questions tied to DAOs. So there's a lot of community building, of course, involved. The question is, what is the critical mass of people you would need to have in the DAO? And how do you want to see decision making? So this is something that is constantly changed and worked at in the DAOs. And yeah, so therefore I can only recommend check it out, because there's a constant transformation going on, also a lot of improvement. And we should never forget that this is really like early stage work. I want to show some variations of DAOs. And I just want to mention one thing. Since I'm sharing my screen, I don't think I can see the chat. So if anyone has a question, I recommend you take the microphone and you ask the question via chat, through the mic, because then I can really listen to it. There is an interesting project coming from Furtherfields.org in London, and you can also see the URL here, DAO.org. So basically, this idea is building decentralized autonomous organizations with others. So yes, to the concept of the DAO. But what DAO is trying to do is connecting several communities and projects and knowledge bases across multiple DAOs to make sure that those DAOs are not too centristic into their own goals and ambitions, but use their power, especially their fundraising power, but also their community power, to build larger structures. So this project resides in the field of arts and culture, because Furtherfield is an arts and culture organization, and they strongly believe that that DAOs, so this basic ability to create organizations online that are able to fundraise money and that are able to develop their own decision-making processes, that that we can use this model, but we can expand it on a more, let's say, social basis, on a more community-related basis. So basically, they call themselves the Blockchain Laboratory and Debate Series for Reinventing the Arts. So basically, you know, just the fact that a lot of what is happening on a DAO, I mean, of course, you can also chat, but you mostly vote, and via voting, you put money into projects. A lot of what is happening there is really about fundraising. So the DAO model calls for cultural makers and artists to really expand their imagination beyond the fundraising aspect, but also thinking of how to build resources together. Because, and that was maybe one of the early projects that Furtherfields did. The main goal is to create a commons for the arts, where a commons in the sense of where resources can be shared, a commons in the sense of where there are shared knowledge bases, there are specific services that members can use. Because otherwise, what's the use of having a successful arts project when there is no real infrastructure around this project, where, you know, communities can exchange, where people can nourish themselves, where we can also commission each other and create little economies between these communities, right? So this is what the DAO project is trying to achieve. And there is a really interesting series of projects that has been recently put online by Furtherfields, so you can check it out on this website. And also there is a concrete project that they have been currently working on, and that's the I think the culture stake project, which is really about creating a token, a possibility of coming up with payment structures within larger communities. But this is maybe also something we can look into a little bit further. But basically, this is about what they try to do with a culture stake project. This is it's a web-based voting system, just like any other DAO voting and connection system, and they use quadratic voting for decentralized cultural decision making and investment. So what they basically try to do is to create a voting mechanism that is a little bit more complex than just saying yes or no, or this binary thinking of either accepting or rejecting, because that's also something, I guess, that you are all aware of, that is sometimes really difficult to take a stand, because there's so many implications around, and sometimes you really want to go a little bit deeper into what a decision actually means. So this is what this whole project is trying to do, trying to build mechanisms or models for connecting and fundraising online, but also at the same time building a culture that is sustainable and that helps people to really build long-term infrastructures. And also based on that is the concept of DISCO. And DISCO is pushing this whole model a little bit more. The DISCO basically is tied to distributed cooperative organizations. They strive at being commons-oriented, cooperative, and feminist economic. So DISCO was founded by Stacco Troncoso, Anne-Marie Utratel. They are both based in Spain. They have been long-time members of the Peer-to-Peer Foundation. And their vision is to use digital organizations for making a living, for allocating funds within a community. But their critique is that once we engage with fundraising, in a group online, we also need to take into account that there are other forms of work, even within that very community, that need to be paid for. So the DISCO governance model rests on different pillars. So one is the model of paid work. And I want to give one example, because the DISCO idea actually grew out of a real organization, which is the Guerrilla Media Collective. If you look up Guerrilla Media Collective, this is a group of translators online. They are organized as a cooperative, and their governance model rests on paid work. So that means work for the translators is coming in, and then they decide who has free time. This person does the work. The cooperative gets paid. There's a certain percentage that remains in the cooperative, and the rest goes to the person who did the job. So this is one pillar, right? The second pillar is pro bono work. So pro bono work means that the Guerrilla Media Collective is deciding to do translation work for NGOs that have a very important cause and could otherwise not afford to hire professional translators. So what they are offering is, for instance, for political manifestos, or for any other form of work where they believe that should be really distributed in other languages, they offer pro bono work, and they do this for free. That also goes into the whole value and labor model of this organization. And the third pillar is the care work. And the care work is everything that is happening within a community. It's the community management, but it's also a community member getting sick. It might be a community member in desperate need of a training course, for instance. So there are many things. If you think of how care work manifests in your communities, in your life, you might come up with many different things. It is, of course, the care work for families, but it's also the care work within communities. The work that is work, but that's very often not recognized as work, but that also has a value and therefore should be considered in the entire value model of the organization. So that means here in DISCO suggests to put every, or not every, but as many digital organizations as possible on these three cornerstones. And in doing so, in combining paid work, pro bono work, and care work, making space for these three components, their belief is that through the paid work, of course, the organization lives. Through the pro bono work, the organization creates very interesting ties to other organizations. This is what DAO promotes, the project by Furtherfields. And by integrating care work, they believe of making their community stronger and also helping other communities to really build an infrastructure. So I guess this is the basic critique of these organizations against DAOs, that they say, please expand your view. Do not only work on your own organization, but but really strive at making yourself part of an infrastructure, of a network, because it's only then that your project is going to survive. So this is basically their starting point. And you also here, I have shared the URL. You can look up their work. There are many, many examples online, and you can really dive into the governance models. So we can only now at a very meta level take a look at these organizations, but I just tried to make a compilation for you of those models that, in my understanding, are really interesting. If there are any questions, just grab the mic and let me know. If not, I would simply proceed. Then there are other organizations that that also Vincent presented last time. I just wanted to make sure to put them here, because what they are trying to do, this is really dedicated also in their mission statement. This is about building a digital infrastructure for self-organization in the performing arts. So if we say infrastructure, of course, this is beyond the individual organization. So what the Sphere is trying to do, also with the help of cryptocurrencies, but also with a lot of new social protocols and governance mechanisms, is to create a new ecology of funding for the arts. And that's also something that's very interesting about all these models. There's also, it's not only the critique of DAOs and the algorithm and the voting power or other things that you can maybe criticize around DAOs, but there's also the critique towards the funding system within the arts. And I guess everybody here in the room has an understanding of how funding for arts and culture works. I can imagine many of you are working in these fields yourself, and you know how difficult it is to really anticipate in the beginning whether your project stands a chance at all. And you all know about the documenting and the financing and all of this, which can sometimes be really a burden and which adds a lot of work that you could otherwise use for your project. So I also really recommend you to look at the Sphere. These are great people. And what they really do is, you know, they are taking, for instance, the Sphere of a circus. So there are Swedish circus artists as a let's say showcase within the Sphere, where they try to build new infrastructure of financing and community building within the world of circus. And I think that's super interesting. This is really beyond all our, you know, traditional thinking of how a circus works, you know, or how, I don't know, performing arts work. All these examples are also a really great way of really expanding our minds of how we look at arts and culture. So that's also something I would very much recommend. A project I have been presented last time, but I think still works really well within this whole connection, is Circles. Circles started last year in fall, and they sort of published a wallet where you can where you get circles. So you get a certain amount of circles every month. This is basically the unconditional basic income, and it's a crypto token, and this token is called Circles. You cannot exchange Circles on any exchange out there. So it means Circles has its value stored within the Circles universe. You cannot, for instance, if you have 2,000 Circles on your wallet, you cannot, at least not now. Maybe this will change in the future, but right now it's not possible. You cannot exchange that in Ether or dollars or whatever. So that means this is a community currency. You need a wallet. It's very easy to create. And you need 3 people of the Circles community to trust you, because they want to they just want to prevent any bots or, you know, problematic people to enter the community. Of course, it's a question whether, you know, finding 3 people to trust is the right approach, because there has been also people very much complaining about this threshold, because it wasn't possible for them to create a wallet. It took them a while to find 3 people to trust them. But in the end, it worked out really well. So Circles is currently in their initial stages of really building local economy in Berlin. What they are currently doing is to find local organizations supermarkets and farmers and delivery drivers and other mobility services to get together and to pay themselves in circles, to really create like a small economic circle where you can only pay in circles. Circles is meant to be spent. It's not that if you hoard it, it gets more valuable. It's the other way around. It loses its value if you never do anything with it. So this is really about, creating value. Of course, also here, the difficult thing is you need to find agreements within a community what a basic income means within your community. And you need to find agreements on the transactions. What do you get for your circles? How does the transaction works? And this whole decision-making process around finances, you still have on circles because there's no algorithm allocating anything automatically. This is really about debating and creating a means of payment with your circles. And that is actually a really difficult thing. And that's also what the team currently understands, that this is really the most difficult threshold. So what Circles is doing, basically, they also have a group wallet as of lately, where you can organize as a group and you can create your own group circles. So that might be interesting for you as well. I think since a couple of days, there's also this, this possibility of creating a group wallet. Check it out, and maybe it could be an interesting instrument for you as well. The founders are based in Berlin, great people, and they are always open for discussion. And maybe if you're really interested in implementing Circles into your work, they might also be able to help. We talked about NFT platforms such as Dada Art or the Furtherfields, which I understand is a very interesting starting point for you right now. Last time, and I think Vincent did a great job, and he really went into all these possibilities of those platforms. So I don't think we need to repeat that. But I maybe if you think Furtherfields could be an interesting starting point, I think what's interesting with them is that this is really about creating a transparent protocol of exhibiting and collecting file-based art. I think that in itself is really interesting. And then, of course, I understand that this is also more infrastructure oriented, which I think is also really interesting. And I guess it's this combination between the art gallery, the online publishing, and the online marketplace that comes together here on the Furtherfield platform that is extremely interesting. So yeah, maybe this is a great starting point for you right now. But maybe it's also something completely different, because if you look at all the examples we have looked at, right, just going back, data art, we talked about it last time, the circles, the sphere, disco, doing the DAO, and also the DAO model. If we look at all these ideas, maybe it's also interesting to, to look at all these and to simply extract some components that you feel are interesting for yourself and that you like and that you could imagine to develop further. And last time we talked about the platform co-ops. That was the session of last time was dedicated specifically for platform co-ops. And I do not want to repeat that, but just to give just to mention it one more time, I think it might be good maybe to look into two examples. First of all, the Resonate Music Streaming Collective, which is a cooperative. So what we have here is these are really legal bodies, right? Everything we've seen so far these are digital organizations, and they are not registered or they are not accepted as real world organizations. Resonate is a cooperative. It's an Irish co-op. They do not reside in Germany, but in Ireland. But nonetheless, it's a company, right? So I think this only makes sense if if you have a long-term plan of creating a business model for your community where you are willing to pay taxes on the long run and where you're willing to really enter a specific market. This is really, that's for the future. This is probably not for now, but still, I think what Resonate Music is doing is really inspiring. And I think it can be inspiring for you as well, because it's basically, Resonate is a cooperative services for people from the world of music. So this is a cooperative that is in the hand of the artists, of the users. Artists get, through every download, they get a fair transaction fee. And Resonate is a perfect spot to implement cryptocurrencies as well, because there are so many opportunities you can think of. You might, for instance, allocate a specific micro payment fraction of your monthly budget to a specific band. And you can do this really well with cryptocurrency. And you can also, I mean, there are several ways of helping to raise funds for this infrastructure. And another really nice side effect is the music you get to hear on Resonate is significantly different from the music you will listen to on the radio or on other mainstream media platforms, simply because there is more diversity and it's just a more eclectic way of presenting music. So in my understanding, this is also much more fun. And another example, and you all know about it, you all know Airbnb. So this is the other example that is currently being launched in several heavily touristic cities in Europe, such as Venice or Bologna, Amsterdam as well. This is basically what Fairbnb is doing is they're taking the Airbnb model, but they have been created a multi-stakeholder model where they are organized as a cooperative, and there's also the city administration and the municipality is part of this organization. This is, of course, I think also this is for the future, but maybe it's also just to help you expanding your mind a little bit about what it is that you think is important in terms of organizational needs. With this overview of examples, I just wanted to show you what is out there currently, what are interesting platforms. The good thing is it's very easy for you to test all of that, to just check into it, to get in touch with the people. And I think it's also something that I would recommend you do, because it's only then that there is no blueprint for any digital community or digital organization these days, because they are all different. They have very different requirements. So I think this is more, this is really more about looking at what's out there, trying to understand your preferences, your needs, and then matching with what is out there. And maybe it's just about getting started on Furtherfields and building something there, becoming part of the community there, and then maybe moving on at some point and start expanding your own thing. I have been speaking for quite a while now, but maybe I could go on, but I think it would be really nice to hear also questions and to help discussing a little bit with you. So I might as well stop at this point. Are there any questions? Is there anything you would like to discuss right now?
I'm thinking about sort of decentralized governance as continuation of governance. So I guess my question is,
decentralized governance as continuation of governance?
yeah, so my question is somehow, is there examples or is there ways that we could dream DOAs as anarchists? Like we talk about this voting rights and tokenizations and how wallets produce power. And I guess I'm thinking, are there ways that we could start talking about it where it hasn't to do with sort of democracy, but where the network deliberately produces anarchy or supports anarchy?
Yeah, I have a hard time to fully grasping, but can I repeat what I think I understood? And then you tell me if that was correct. Would that be okay? I understood this question that that all the models we are talking about now are basically a continuation of what we already know about governance and so forth. But this question was more about whether a more anarchist way of getting organized can function, and whether I have any good examples for that.
Yeah, sure.
I think that's really a great question, because what for me the big question is, what is anarchy in relation to getting organized? I think that's really interesting, because and I would be interesting to hear your decision. I think there have been online platforms that have been totally anarchic, right? Where people just could post everything they liked. But there is always a protocol. Let's look at 4chan, for instance, right? 4chan became famous as a breeding place for anonymous, but also for several memes, but also for a lot of spam, etc. So you could basically post anything you like and people could respond to it, but there's always the protocol that lets content, that deletes content after a while and changes the positioning of the content. So the question is, to what extent an online platform can be anarchic at all? Because there's always an underlying protocol. Of all the organizations I know, they always, at some point, they have always chosen for, I would say, at least a basic organizational protocol, because if you want to work towards a specific goal, I wonder, how can you then rely on anarchy to move on? I'm just not sure about it. I find this question, I find it really difficult. And maybe I have to think a little bit longer about it, because all the examples I have been giving are dedicated to organizing, right? So my whole thinking is organized around organizational design, of course. But the question is, yeah, is there a way of having more loose ties, of not applying governance protocols? It's a really good way, because even though if you would use a software such as Lumio, for instance, which is a software for decision making and also for discussion online, you could, of course, also not take any decisions, or you can ignore the decisions, or you can simply, or you can just get a sense of what people think, but you don't have to take any consequences from it. Yeah, but to really answer your question briefly, I'm afraid I don't have any good examples of purely anarchic platforms. I don't know. Maybe others have in the room.
All right, but I think also anarchism maybe is mistranslated as chaos. Like I think what I was specifically thinking about was a way of starting to use another terminology that has less to do with democracy and more considers, maybe this is just maybe what I'm just thinking, maybe it isn't even a question, I'm sorry. But like it's a way that we can sort of prioritize like the actions around achieving the goal where, because every time I hear about these like organizations, I hear about voting, I hear about decision making, it renders this idea that we're supposed to govern each other's actions to reach the same goal, while there might actually be within the structure, within the DOA, some kind of built-in structure that allows for conflicting actions, for oppositional movements, but that sort of like proposes that they want to reach the same thing. Does that make sense?
But this happens.
Yeah.
I know that this goes.
My problem is that I don't think the sound is transmitted from the mic. I hear you really well, but if I'm not sure. I think I only understood parts of it. What I think I understood is of course is the question of how conflict resolution can take place, and also maybe about the nature of voting, because I can imagine one of the problems that the skepticism is that we all know that voting is far more than just saying yes or no. It's of course, it's rather about specific sentiments or feelings, and you can't always capture that. And this is also, it's also something that DAOs and all these organizations are currently working on, because this is not, I don't think we are at that point yet where it's possible to capture people's sentiments and, you know, and to provide different spaces for different ideas and sentiments. That's how it, in my understanding, does not work right now.
Just a quick. I think it's all. So I think it partly works on how you organize your DAO, and so you could implement more complex decision making or like run parallel projects, for example. They could be conflicting, and you could have a politics and decide that you want to have 2 or 3 projects that might actually even negate each other, and see whichever plays out. So like you can implement anarchist ideas, but the problem is that system is still like quite a solid organizational thing. There's a protocol, and the power relies more on the protocol level now. No? Like who defines the rules that can be played, and not who then plays the rules. No? Like one is a level up.
Exactly. Who writes the code?
Who writes the code, for example? Yeah. Who decides what is implemented? What is version 1? What is version 2? What is how flexible is the whole thing? And so there is always this idea of libertarian idea of anything is free and anything goes, and then you kind of get into the discussion and the questions: who defines the protocol? Bitcoin is a protocol, or like every cryptocurrency, even though it is like touted as the libertarian heaven, it's not. And there is something to look at on control and protocol level.
And I think also a literacy of coding, for an example, so that excludes also a lot of people from the participation process. This kind of idea of a digital literacy you can have so easily on this level. So to take part on programming a structure for a DAO or for a platform. And it shouldn't be, in my opinion, too. It should be really easy to participate and bring yourself into this. And so I see there the tension between these people writing code as a law, the code, and then people living it. So, but that could be also part of the platform culture. So that you say, this is I think there are feminist servers or so where where there is a culture around the server and the hardware and around the software, which is determined by the participants in this sense. So then it's an ongoing process of a never finished platform. So that could be maybe also a solution that is, yeah, that you have to build with your community, your platform, which is like a mirror of this community. And if it is an anarchistic community, then they could make it possible to have an anarchistic server or platform. Yeah.
Maybe we can extend the question back to Ela. That is, can we just go a little bit deeper into what is a governing node?
You have to get closer, I think.
What is the
Like, back to Ela. Like, what is a governing node in a DOA? Like, what could an example be for Disco co-op? So, like, what is specifically what is one of the decisions that they will have to make, and what happens in the occurrence of a conflict where one of the members has a difference in opinion, right? Like, how much governance can there be in a DOA? What has the member who are now disagreeing signed up for? Will they have to do something? Is the punitive measures built into the decision-making process? I guess I'm attacking a little bit the governance of everything, and I was just wondering if you have any experience with specifically, like, when a DOA like Disco Co-op, for example, or any one of your choice, has a decision and somebody, or like this decision has to be enacted, but now there are different groupations in the DOA, somebody that supported the decision and somebody who didn't. You know? Does that make sense? Like, what happens to the translator who voted against the decision, but now the decision has been made?
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah. So you would like to know what happens if the decision-making process proves to be much more complex. Yeah. Yeah, you know, that's super interesting because it happens all the time. Yeah. It's really it's because we are all human beings, and it's really difficult to simply trust on the algorithm or on the protocol, as Vincent just mentioned, because of course there are people not happy with decisions, and sometimes decisions are being made, but the majority of the community feels that this is unfair. So if stuff like that happens, it happens outside of the protocol or of the voting mechanism. You know, it happens in the Telegram groups. There are fights going on in the chat. There are fights going on all the communication platforms. But all the complex human stuff is mostly happening outside of the voting protocols, and simply because, as you say, it is not that easy to always come up with a clear yes or no. And voting research and practice in the past couple of years, they have taken that into account. So we have seen, many different platforms emerging where there is, for instance, there is quadratic voting, where people can point out how intensely they feel about certain things, rather than just pointing the direction, for instance. So this is becoming more complex. But I was part of a DAO. Maybe I just can give an example to illustrate that a little bit. So I wanted to do a DAO learning journey at Supermarkt Berlin 2 years ago, and I wanted to raise funds for it, right? So what happened that I put that project on DAO Stack, and I asked for funds. So I presented a little finance plan, how much funds I would need, and what the idea of that DAO learning journey was, and who were our partners. So I put it out there, and apparently it was in a way a little bit against not the rules, but maybe the goals of the platform, because at some point they have agreed not to fund that, simply because there has been other educational resources before. So everyone was thinking, okay, or not everyone, but certain leaders of the project, they thought, okay, yeah, we had something like that before, so let's not repeat ourselves. But then there was an interesting dynamics, because there were people in the community that liked the idea and that wanted to be part of. So what happened was, discussions in the Telegram group, and also real world meetings where things have been discussed and specified. And then in the end, I had to make an extra proposal, and then I got the funds, which was really nice. And we did the project together with DAO Stack. But it did not happen because the algorithm or the protocol worked so well. It only happened because we managed to organize as human beings in a very complex way. So I'm just illustrating that because, to my knowledge, there is no platform whatsoever out there that really provides any technological infrastructure that saves us from this messy human struggling about decision making. We are far from that, in fact.
I think we are happy now with, and there are no questions anymore. And I would say thank you for your presentation and to have you here. And yeah, would finish then the stream with this. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.